This is, like I said, week two. I booked every Friday for this clinic, this Q&A sessions. There's no agenda. It's free form. So what does that mean? Well, if you have any questions in general, if it's an on-one question, bring it up. If you have just a general photography question, bring it up, or a gear question, use the questions module. You'll see it in your GoToWebinar control panel. If you click on the little arrow icon to the right of questions, the one pointing to the top left, it'll pop out the questions module and put it into its own window, which is kind of nice because you can expand it and make it larger. I always put out submissions for people to submit images that they want me to try to work on. And so I have another 4 or 5 images that we'll work on the fly in between questions. Basically, I just looked when the emails come to me with the images embedded into them. I look at them just to make sure that they're, okay, that they're presentable, and then I don't do any work on them. I want to work on them literally on the fly with you guys here, so we kind of see it go through. Um, and then, most importantly, let's just have some fun with this. We had a great time last week, and so I'm hoping to repeat that this week as well. Um, Amalia, I did get your email about creating categories um, in photo frame, and I submitted that to our QA people because that's actually a very good question. I'm waiting to hear back, and I'll let you know once I hear back. But it was a good question. So let's um let's hide this for a second. Um, Bob, where can we submit images? You could just email them to me at the end of the. I'll actually put it out here in the chat session. I'll put my email address right now so people can um, email me. So in the chat window, you should see my email address. And by all means, if you have an image you want me to take a roll, I'll be happy to do it. Now, just to kind of disclaimer it again, if you read the body of this event on GoToMeeting, I posted a disclaimer. onOne does not own your images. We will never use them by sending me an image for the clinic, you're giving me permission to just work on it for this clinic. So images that were sent to me that I didn't work on in week two, if I want to work on them on week three, I will email you and ask you, is it okay for me to use it? Other than that, the only place it'll appear is on the recorded session. Otherwise, we will never use it. We are very, very serious about photographers owning their copyright and controlling how it's used. So it will only appear live on this webinar and obviously in posterity with the recorded webinars. So that's it. All right. Let's actually, I see Bernard has a question. I just want to see it really quickly. So Bernard asks, we recently had earlier this week a webinar with Seth Resnick. Seth does a monthly webinar with us for the year of 2011. The second Wednesday of every month through December will be a new webinar. And I was in Houston attending a Kelby event, so I wasn't able to participate. But when I did my workflow webinars last month, which are available on our archive, I explained that I use a new catalog in Lightroom. I use Lightroom for my manager. I create a new catalog every quarter. That's just for me. That's how I like to organize things. My rationale is with the earlier versions of Lightroom, the larger the catalog got, the more bogged down it got. With Lightroom 3, however, the reports are that has been fixed. But before Lightroom 3, what I did was to kind of mitigate the size of the catalog, I created quarterly catalogs. And it's a practice that just became part of my workflow, so I continue doing it now. The limitation is that, let's say I have an image in Q4 of last year, and we're in Q1 of this year. I can't search, keywords or metadata for that image because it's not in the resident catalog. So to that, we'll have to go back and open up that catalog. Now, I kind of I've gotten used to the temporal relationship of my photos. Like I remember, I have a good idea of which quarter of which year an image I took or that I'm looking for is in. And worst case, to open up a catalog really doesn't take a lot of time. Like I can switch from one catalog to another, and it takes maybe 15 seconds. So here we're in another catalog done. It's not that big of a deal for me. Um, but Bernard, I hope that answers your question. Um, I do believe that in Lightroom 3, the database technology for the catalogs has been improved so that you can keep adding, which is great. Um, oh, is this so? I see Steve asked a question. Is this the image, Steve, that you were actually talking about? Um, it just, I think it's a coincidence that it came up. Oh, cool. Um, so Steve wants to know what if I can share the secrets of getting the shot just peeking over the horizon. Um, Now, are you talking about how I got the burst like that, or are you just talking about how I processed it? And I'll just wait to hear what your response is. But if you're talking about the burst effect, well, the timing is just a matter of getting a quick succession of brackets. The way you get a burst like this is by dropping down your aperture, by closing it down. So this aperture, this was shot at f18, and it is Cadillac Mountain, Mike. This is Cadillac Mountain at in Acadia National Park, Maine, uh, taken this past summer um, at sunset. So over to the right, you would see the porcupines, and it's a beautiful. For parts of the year, Cadillac Mountain is the first place in the U.S. where the sun hits, where the light of the sun hits on the country. In other parts of the year, it's up in Canada. So we were having a beautiful day. I saw that the clouds are going to be really nice for sunset, and I really look for clouds when I shoot sunset. I'm really looking for something in the sky other than just blue or peachy sky. I want something for the light to reflect off of. So I just waited for the sun to get around the horizon, and the sun isn't moving that fast that your brackets will see ghosting. As you can see here, I really didn't do much other than tone mapped it. So um, you shouldn't worry about that unless you're taking extremely long exposures where the sun's actually coming out of view. But for the most part, all I did was set the camera up, compose the shot, and fire off my brackets, which you can see right here. So these are the brackets. I'll just scroll through them. So that's exposing for the sun itself. And then we'll start exposing for midtone and high and shadows. And these are our shadow brackets. So that's basically what I did there. Um, Earlier, Ray had asked the question if I can show how to use focal point where we preserve a certain element of the scene and render everything else out of focus. And I did this demo before, but I think this does a really nice job of illustrating that. So Ray, well, let's go into this catalog over here, and I'm going to open this image up in Photoshop. I like working on this image because it makes a good use of selections. So here's an image, and what I want to do is I want to preserve the couple on the dance floor, and this image was taken by Andy Marcus of Fred Marcus Studios in New York. The problem, I wouldn't even say it's a problem because it's a very cool shot, but the couple gets drowned out in the background because of the ornate patterns that's cast by these various chandeliers. Also, I'm not a fan of that little exit sign that you can see right over here. So if I know that I want to preserve the couple, what you want to do is you want to make a selection of in Photoshop of whatever you want focal point to work on. So what does that mean exactly? What does that mean? Well, if I want to, if I want focal point to work on the dance floor and the background and not the couple, what I can do is this. I can use my quick select tool, which is right here. It's the fourth icon on the toolbar, and I could start selecting the couple. And I'm not spending a lot of time here because I have the selection already saved. But if I were to send this image with this selection into focal point, because the couple is selected, focal point would only work on the couple, and we don't want that. Remember, whatever you send in is what focal point will work on. So in theory, if I want focal point to work on everything but the couple, I can go to select and then inverse. And that is essentially selects the opposite of whatever is currently selected. So now with this situation, the couple or whatever was in my selection would remain in focus, and the background and the dance floor would be worked on in focal point. So I have under my channels here, I have a selection already saved as an alpha channel. So I'm just going to load that. And the way I loaded that was I put my cursor, my little finger cursor, in the thumbnail of the alpha channel, and on my Mac I press Command, or on the PC I'd press Control, and you can see how the icon changes, and that will load your selection. Now, what does that mean? Well, you first have to create a selection, or you have to create an alpha channel before you can load it. So if you want, what you can do is you can go and let's just pretend that we do a really nice job of our selection. Let's say we spent some good time refining this. We can close that up right there, close this up over here, add the top of his head, and then that's good. So this is a good selection now. What I would do is I would go to select and inverse, and now if I go to my channels palette, which you can get to if you don't know where it is, go to Window and select Channels. You will click on this icon. It looks like a layer mask icon. Just click it once. And you'll see now you have a second alpha channel, which you can rename to whatever you want. And you can see what the channel looks like. So, turn these off. What you can do now is, by coming here, if you hit the Command or Control key, it'll load that selection. Because the selection is loaded, if we go into focal point, nope. Got to be on an RGB layer first. So you'll see that focal point will preserve. Let's reset everything. Now you can see this. The selection I made was not very good, and it'll become more apparent once we finish this image. And cool, Mike. I'm glad you're digging this tip. So watch. Here's our focus bug. Notice how wherever I put it, I'll put it up here in the corner. This area is in focus, but so is our couple, and you can see what I mean by bad selection. We didn't refine it very well, and that's fine. I'm not worried about that. But you know what? To be clean, let's do this. Let's cancel out of here, and let's load the other selection. I'll deselect everything, and let's load this selection because it's a little bit better. And now let's go back into focal point. Okay, so it's a little bit better. It's not as abrupt. So what I can do now is change my shape of my bug from round to planar, and by adjusting the orientation and the positioning, now we're starting to get more of a realistic depth of field, a shallower realistic depth of field. What I can do now is I can select a different lens from the drop down here, which will mimic the lens that you select. I can then boost the highlight bloom, which will increase the brightness of the specular highlights. And then I can also drop the brightness and the contrast. And the cool thing about the brightness and the contrast sliders is that they only work on the areas that focal point is working on. So it's only working on darkening and boosting the contrast of the background, which adds a really, really nice kind of dramatic look. And then finally, you can also add a vignette. And we can turn. So here's a little tip. A lot of times I find that people, including myself, I'm not going to play high and mighty, but a lot of times people ignore checkboxes, especially when there are a lot of them in succession. And this is an important one to take a look at. Under the vignette tool in focal point, there's a checkbox that says vignette follows focus bug. So again, our focus bug is right here. You can see the grids. If you have this checkbox selected, when you add a vignette, it's going to kind of vignette around the bug itself, which you may not want. If you want the vignette, which is basically burning edges or darkening edges of a frame, if you want it to darken evenly from the edge of from the corners of the frame, you want to deselect that checkbox, and it'll darken now from the corners. So that's a little tip I wanted to give you too. Show them starburst. Sure, you got it, Mike. So this is another area of focal point that gets ignored a lot. So you see this aperture here. So for those of you that may not be familiar about what an aperture is, the aperture is the diameter of the hole that is created when the blades of your lens close down. The larger the aperture, or basically the smaller the actual f-stop number, so like a 2.8 or a 1.4, that's a very large diameter aperture. That will require a lot less light or a lot less time to expose because it's such a wide aperture, it's letting more light in, but it'll also give you a shallow depth of field. When you close down your aperture or increase the number, so f16, f18, it'll take longer to expose because that hole is much smaller. It needs more time to get light in, but you're also building depth of field in that process. So something like an f16 would give you this kind of a shot where everything's in focus. And now we're simulating 1.4. Now, to Mike's point, the quality of the blades, as well as how many blades are in your lens, play a part in the quality of the bokeh area, the areas that are out of focus. I know people who buy vintage lenses with adapters to work on their cameras solely because the qualities of this out of focus area are so unique. You know, you buy a 24-70, a Canon 24-70 or a Nikon 24-70 or a 17-40 or one of the more, the common lenses. Well, they all kind of, for the most part, have the same qualities. But there are some vintage lenses, like I have an 85mm 2.0 Olympus Zuiko lens, which is an old lens, and I bought it for about $225 off of some guy on Craigslist, and it's just fantastic because of the qualities that of the out of focus areas at 2.0. So I'm kind of going, in a tangent, but Mike wants me to show you how you can create almost like a burst effect with these specular highlights. To do that, we've got this curvature slider right here, and you can see right now our aperture is circular. So what that means is every one of these highlights you can see are uniform in shape. They're circular. If I drop the curvature down, you should start to see the shape change. And now what will happen is all of those, the specular highlights will change. Now, this is an 8-sided aperture, which means there were 8 blades in here. If we drop it down to 5, that's looking more like a star, and we can bring it down. So now that's looking like almost kind of like a starburst. You can also turn it to 3 and make it triangular, and then make it an actual triangle just by adjusting the curvature. If you want, you can also adjust the rotation with the rotation slider. So there are funky things you can do. For those of you that own Lens Babies, actually you don't even have to own a Lens Baby, but with a Lens Baby, they come with aperture templates. There's a one that's a 2.8, a 4.0, a 5.6, but they also give you blank templates where you can actually cut a shape into the disc, and whatever the shape is what your specular highlights will take on, because that's the shape of your aperture. That's the shape that the light's coming in and hitting the sensor. So it's kind of fun. Yeah, Candice, not a lot of people touch these sliders, or these sliders here rather. They kind of get ignored. But remember, you can control, and you can make it totally smooth with 11 sides and make it like very, very, very round, like perfectly round, or you can kind of get this crazy shape, kind of like what does that look like? Almost like an urchin. So you can have fun with it. And then if you want to boost them even more, just adjust the highlight bloom, bring it up even more, and they get brighter. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, Bob. Yeah, these products are robust. It's just it's getting to know what they can do. And I promise you, there's still things that I don't know. And I've used these products for years. Every time I watch Dan, who's our senior product manager, do something, I always learn something new. So it's cool. And I'm glad I have this opportunity to spend time with you guys, just kind of one-off doing these things. So, um, yeah, they do make us look talented. They make us look like we're far better photographers than we actually are. But hey, that's the name of the game. Uh, there is no exception. My standard disclaimer as a photographer and especially as a an employee of onOne software is there is no exception to getting a good shot in camera. I'm not saying that um, post processing is not allowed or looked down upon. You know, you will always have your detractors and your fans, no matter what you do. So, um, to that effect, when you're on the field, you have to get the best possible shot. You have to know how to use your camera. You have to know the correlation of the holy trinity of ISO, shutter speed, and aperture, how to manipulate them on the fly to get a good exposure. Or, if you're doing HDR, which kind of compensates for getting proper exposure in a way, um, how to get a good composition, how to frame your image, how to know what to eliminate, how to know what to include. So none of these things can be replaced or used as a surrogate for with post processing. It's not a replacement. So that's my little spiel there. I don't want to preach about that too much. So uh, can I save my steps for later use? Um, Christian, not really. In Photo Tools, once you hit apply, if you apply a series of effects and you hit apply, you can't go back. You can't open the image up in Photo Tools and retweak. What you can do is save the effects as a preset and use them for future images. A preset is a snapshot of whatever effects you have listed in Photo Tools, and it records the strengths that they were used at. So it's kind of cool there. But it won't save it in metadata. All right, let's have some fun with some of the users submitted images. There was one from last week I want to start on right away. It was Dave. So Dave P gave me a bunch of images. We worked on, I think, one of them last week, and he gave me some more since. But this one I didn't get to last week, and I really, really dig it. I think we can have a lot of fun with this. I think. Remember, I haven't touched these images. Um, so let's try it out. But I do see a question by Bob. What's the best way to minimize severe grain that shows up in poorly lit digital images? So the grain is noise, and usually the culprit for noise is that you had to boost up your ISO um, to compensate for the slow shutter, and that often occurs in low lit scenes. The best So I use a product for noise reduction called Denoise by Topaz Labs. It's a great product. The reason why I use it is because it's 64-bit. I know Nick Software has their noise reduction product, which I have as well. Um, but I like the Denoise product. I just like it. The one I used to love the most is a product called Noiseware Pro by Imagenomics. But these guys don't feel it's really necessary to release a 64-bit version for the Mac. They went ahead and released a PC version, but you know, the Mac community apparently is not worth recompiling. So it's a bummer because that was, in my opinion, the strongest of the noise reduction products. Now, let me just, I know that I said I'd work on Dave's image, but this is a kind of another way why I like, a lot of people ask, all right, well, the Lightroom 3 has noise reduction in it, and it's excellent. Why don't you use that? Well, I'll show you why. Let me see if I can find an image that's noisy. Well, let me try to go to one of my own images. I'll go to, let's go to the architecture catalog. So these are the catalogs I use when I do my webinars with you guys. I build these libraries of images and I have them set so that we could start working on them. I don't know if I even have any images with too much noise in them. I have images with dust spots, that's not a problem, but noise. Maybe, let me see if this night shot has noise. Or you know what, we can even just simulate as if the image did have noise. All right, let's pretend this image here. Let's go here. Or no, you know what? Let's go to this one. Because a lot of times with HDR, noise is introduced. So let's send this into Photoshop. The reason why I go to Photoshop to do noise reduction, as opposed to doing it in Lightroom, is because I can create a selection of where I want the noise reduction filter to apply. So in this case here, I can select the sky, and that was relatively easy. I can just go ahead and refine my selection. So you can see that pretty much only the sky is selected. In the Lightroom, when I apply noise reduction, it applies globally to the entire image. And things like these facades, they need texture. I don't want them to be smoothed out. I want them to be texturized. So here, by making this selection and then going to Filter and then Topaz Labs and selecting Denoise, I can go through, and then when it applies the noise reduction, it will only apply to whatever's in the selection. I love that. So now, shameless promotion of an onOne product coming out. We have Perfect Layers. Perfect Layers is coming out. I believe the public preview release is coming out this month, and then we're going to have the full version coming out shortly after. Anyone who's a Suite owner or Suite 5 owner will get it for free. What that will allow me to do is go here and duplicate this. So I can go into my grid, duplicate it. So now I have 2 copies. I can run the noise reduction in Lightroom on this image, so the whole image will get noise reduced, if that's even a word or a term. Well, let's pretend it's a word or a term, noise reduced. And then I can send these 2 images into Perfect Layers, and then Perfect Layers will allow me to mask out the buildings. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way to get to the same result, but if you don't have Photoshop, it saves you $1,000 for Photoshop. Or if you don't have a lot of system memory, and Photoshop does take up a bunch of system memory, Perfect Layers will have a lot smaller footprint. So I am super excited for that product to come out, but that's what will allow me to do. So, yeah, Bernard, I mean, Bernard says using keywords will make the work easier. I don't really use keywords just because and it's up to the individual. Lightroom has a wonderful way of managing keywords. You can see I don't even have the keywords expanded. I just don't use them. If I were a stock photographer or a photojournalist, keywords are everything. It makes or breaks you. I just don't need to because I don't know, I can find what I need pretty easily with my own internal system. So, Bob, I hope that was a good answer to your question about how to that's how I would go about reducing the noise, but you want to be careful because you want to make sure that you have good detail in the areas that need detail. So here, in this case here, if I wanted to add detail, I don't know if I have an adjustment brush that I built. I don't know if it's on this. It's not. So it's just basically a slight. Let me reset everything. So it was a boost in contrast, a huge boost in clarity, a huge boost in sharpness, and a tiny boost in brightness. And what that will allow me to do is just brush in texture in Lightroom. So here I can kind of just brush texture. If you go onto my blog, which is just my name, brianmatiash.com, do a search for the HDR texture brush. You can download it for free. It's only for Lightroom. I don't know how to do it for Aperture, but you can. It does a nice job of bringing texture back in to certain areas, and so I use that a lot as well. Okay, let's go back to Dave's image because I kind of segued. Let's bring it into Photoshop and let's see what we can do here. I do dig this. So right off the bat, let's try that principle that I just showed you, that focal point thing, where we'll select her, and because I want her to pop off the background. So I'm just using my quick select brush. I want to get her guitar, All right, and I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. I want to let's refine this because I don't want that to be there. This is good. This is good. This is good. Let's bring that in there. I wonder if I can get that little bit of hair. That's not bad. All right, we'll live with it. Get right around here. Get this bit of hair. This is all good. Okay, so now we'll go and select the inverse. Now, a lot of times, if I'm going to be, if I think I'm going to come back to this image, oh, whoa, we need to make sure we get. Let me undo that. Edit. Let me go to my history. Okay, I want to make sure I get this. Okay, so we got everything in her body. That's, oh, the guitar here we need to get. See, it's good to kind of make sure you're looking at what your selection is. Now we can go to, let's go to layers palette, go to select inverse. And if I think I'm gonna try something different, I'll always go to my channels and create a new channel. So that worst case, oops, I deleted it or I deselected it, I can reselect easy enough. Now we can go into focal point and start having fun. So I wonder why oh, let me reset everything. Okay. So here we can kind of play around with the blur. And you can see again, you'll want to refine the selection, or you'll want to maybe do some masking or some blending, but we can start having fun with really having her pop off the background. Um, and I see what's happening. The highlight bloom is adding that kind of glow because we didn't refine our selection, which is fine. We can turn that off altogether. I would probably soften these edges here because they're too harsh. But let's just pretend that we have this good. It's we've gone through the rigmarole. We can do several things. Like right now, that's too narrow. Let's do this. Let's bring our feathering up to 100. Let's see what the mask looks like. All right, so obviously she's in shape because we made the selection. Um, let me see what a planar bug will look like. So I changed the shape now. I'm going to make it really narrow. And that's looking pretty good too. I will boost the amount up, make it really blurry. And that's good for now. Let me drop a vignette on as well. Okay, now let's hit apply. So we've adjusted the depth of field here. We didn't have to do this. Can you inverse the focal point, Raymond? Very great question. You absolutely can. So if I wanted everything outside of the focus bug to be in focus, if we go back into focal point really quickly, um, over here, here, there's a checkbox for invert selection. So you'll select that and it'll make the bug. So right now, whenever you have a bug, um, everything inside of the bug will be in focus and anything outside will be out of focus. But if you want it to be opposite, just check that invert selection. So you see how it's focusing on the mask now, everything inside the bug. So that kind of looks trippy in a cool way. So let's go in now, we'll deselect and we'll go into Photo Tools. Let me reset my panel here. Oh, why isn't it resetting? There we go. Okay. All right, so Mike asks, when you select an image in this manner and open focal point, is it possible to delete the bug? You have to have at least one bug up. Um, Now, if you're saying, so to that respect, you need to have one bug, um, and it'll work on everything outside of the inverted selection. But if you want to work on the entire image, if that's what I'm assuming, you'll have to cancel out a focal point and remove your selection. And that will allow you to work on the whole image. So we can actually, I kind of want to do that. Let's cancel out of here. I kind of don't like the way it looked like that. Let's, without any selection made, let's go to focal point and see if we can do something funky. Like, so here now, focal point's working on the whole image. You can see that you need at least one bug. You can add several bugs, but we don't need several bugs in this case. Here, let's take our focal point and put it over her. The reason why it's still kind of blurry if we show our mask is because we have our feathering at 100. So watch what happens as I bring the feathering down to 0. We have that hard line, and you can see there's the hard line. But we don't want that. We actually want to have a little bit of a transition, and that's controlled by the feather. Um, Now, I'm not even sure whether I like this. Um, Maybe focal point doesn't have much of a place here without a selection. And that's a good point. I mean, I'm kind of glad that you're seeing this. You don't have to go through all the products, or not every image has to utilize all the products. You want it to make sense. Like here, we could kind of do something. We can take the focus brush and we could start painting focus on our head. We can kind of, let's bring the feathering up so we have a nice kind of smooth transition. And so we can kind of selectively create focus where we want it. But it's really up to you how stylized you want it to get. Just make sure that if you're going to do that, make sure you paint in the areas that should be in focus, that you don't have a piece of out of focus area in the middle of the subject. So here we can kind of paint that into focus and then paint her arm, or her hand rather, and the guitar in focus. It's kind of looking okay. I mean, she has a soft focus look to her over here. Kind of want her hair to be more in focus there. Let's show the mask and see. So yeah, here we need to get the rest of her face in focus. And her blouse should be in focus. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of looking okay. We can work on this. Let's hit apply. And now we'll go into photo tools. Let me see what questions have come in. Can you save your adjustments as a preset? Yeah, focal point has preset support. So if there's a specific feathering and amount and shape of a aperture that you like, you can save that as a preset and reload it in another image. So let's go into photo tools and have some real fun. This is my favorite product. I mean, this is what I use every day. So here, let's go into stylized effects and let's try, let's first try high key color. And we'll just do normal. Let's drop down the strength. So that's kind of cool right there. A little bit of a boost. Let's see a little bit more. Okay. Next, let's add an effect called Hollywood Intensity. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Hollywood Intensity. There it is. This is going to add a kind of a really, really soft glamour look to her. And I like it, but I'm going to paint it out of her face and her neckline. And you want to be careful that when you paint that you mask in areas like her shirt that should be that should have the effect. So now we're getting kind of a, I don't know, I'm really blacking out the background because the background, there's not much of interest for me there. And then let's see. Anything more that we add, you'll see will probably make the image really dark. I'm already starting to sense that, but let's add cyberpunk to cool it off a bit because it's got a weird cast to it. That's way too much. Let's drop it down and just a tiny bit. We'll cut into that kind of the color from the concert lights. So let's see if this is good. Let's deselect it. I'm not totally sold on this. We can keep working on it. If you want, we can save this as a preset now. Let's say I want to come back to this. I can save it as a preset and do, concert test one, and then we can put it in a category that we want, like whatever. We can put it in any category, or we can create a new category. So let's just put it in vintage, say, and hit create. So what I can do now is I can reset this, and if I want to come back, I can go to my presets and then find that concert test one, which is right here. And the cool thing is that it'll save the image that you were using. So here's the before, and here's the after. And you can kind of make it look, you can make it larger by clicking on the little lines here. You can drag it up and make the library larger so you can see the before and the after. Now here's the thing to note about presets. Let's add the preset to the stack. You'll see the 3 effects that we entered in, but you remember we masked out the face. The preset does not capture masks, so you'd have to go to the Hollywood intensity and then select paint out and then remove that area again. So that's just a point to make. And it makes sense because think about it. Let's say we did capture masks and you apply this to a totally different image. You don't want this random mask. Oops. You don't want this appearing on another image. So we don't capture masks. So you just have to remember to come back and paint it out, but it doesn't really take that long. My point is by saving that selection, we can now go in and do different things. Like we can go to the categories. We can go to the film and darkroom category and try this vintage. And let's see what that does. So here, if we want, we can change it. And that's kind of looking cool too, because it kind of has a cross-processed look to it. So Marcy, sorry, Mr. Howland, process creative. Okay, yeah, sure. So a preset, Marcy, a preset is a collection of effects. So let's just add a bunch of different effects. And we're going to totally ruin the image in the process, but so be it. Dave will understand. Okay, actually that kind of looks pretty cool. That does look kind of cool. So here, Marcy, a preset is a collection of effects. So over here in the top right is your stack, and these are your effects. Now let's say you like this combination of effects at their strength. So we will bring the cross process up a little or down a little bit. We'll bring sepia down. We'll bring vintage down a little bit, and then let's go back and activate them. So let's say you like this combination. You can go to File and then Save Preset. And what the preset will do is it'll capture these effects in this order and at the fade, at the strength of each of the effects. You can name the effect, you can put it in a category that you want, or you can create a new category. You can put your name in here. So this is, Brian Matiash. A description, cool cross-process, look for low light and concert. Then you can specify keywords that you can search by. So I can go here saying glowing, I don't know, color, and you can select whatever you want. And then by hitting create, if you go to your presets category here, and then go to, I don't even remember where I put it. I don't remember what I called it. Oh, let me do a search for Brian. How come I don't even remember what I called it? Oh, I didn't name it anything. My preset. So let's say I named it my preset. I can go here and I can see the preview of the image, and then I can just add it to the stack. So you can use this on multiple images. And if you're one who likes to do batch processing, when is it too late? Oh, so let me finish my thought first. If you're into batch processing, where you want to apply this preset to multiple images, you can do that using the Photo Tools batch engine. So it's just a nice way to kind of get the same look to a bunch of different images. When is it too late in the process to save a preset? Well, if you go to the presets category again, and you go to the recently used subcategory, Photo Tools will remember the last 6 times you hit apply. So the last time, this was, I was working on an image here for a webinar the other day, so it saved it. You can see the before and the after. And this was the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time. So these are images actually from last week's clinic. And so when it's too late is if you use Photo Tools 6 times. So let's say this was the last use 6. If I hit apply now, this particular preset will be forgotten. Photo Tools remembers the last 6 times. So as long as it's anywhere within these last 6, you can actually load it. So I can hit add to stack. It'll bring the effects that I used for this particular image onto the image here so you can see the effects. Now I'm free to go and save the preset. So I can go here, File, Save Preset, and then save it. So that's basically it's too late. Like if you were to add these 3 effects here and hit apply without saving a preset, you can always come back to Photo Tools and just go to this last use and save the preset. How do you remove a preset? Very good question. To remove a preset, you'll go to File, Show Presets Folder. It'll bring you to the presets folder here. And so you'll find whatever preset you want to remove. You can see the categories are listed here. You just select it and delete it. And then when you launch Photo Tools the next time, it'll be gone. But the nice thing is, and this is a nice little segue, you can give these PTO files to anyone who can then import them into their copy of Photo Tools. So I do this a lot. I create these presets and then I put them on our onOne blog as expansion packs, which there's one right now on our blog. Just download it for free. And these are presets that I built for HDR images that I find work really well with HDR. To import it, let's say I sent you a PTO file, I would just go in Photo Tools, I'd go to File, Import Preset, and then just point to the preset. And then you can select which category it should get imported into. So Marcy, I hope that answered your question. How do you import or how do you load the presets? Just go to File and then Import and then point to the PTO file. Cool. So right now, Dawn says, if I'm working in Photoshop and make image a smart object, all my edits appear as smart filters. Sometimes I'll go back. Yeah, Focal Point works as a smart object or a smart filter, but the other products don't. So, and I'm late because I've been meaning to get a video tutorial recorded on how to use smart filters with Focal Point, but I just haven't had the time to do it. It will come. So I hope that helps. Candice, yeah, your feature about capturing masks from one effect to another, I can't answer that. But yeah, I can't answer that. But yeah. So let me see if there are any other questions. So Dave, I hope that kind of gave you an idea of something that I would do with this image here with Focal Point and with Photo Tools. Let's move on to another one. Where is my window? Oh, did I close it? All right, let me go to the webinars and our clinic and week 2. Okay, let's see this one here. This is a veil. Mike sent it to me a couple of days ago. So it's a small resolution image. So I'm not, let me see if this is the actual resolution, if this is 100%. Yeah, it's at 100%. So it's kind of small. I want everything in focus here, so I'm not going to go into Focal Point. There was a question earlier, let me just find it, about the onOne palette, how not all of the applications show up in the palette. That happens sometimes if you cancel out of the product, one of the products, and it causes some of these apps to disappear. There are two ways that you can get them back. You can either just toggle if the palette is docked with other palettes. If you toggle back and forth, it'll force the reload. Or you can just go and toggle it by going to Window Extensions and then turning it off and then turning it back on. It's not something with your computer. It's a problem. It's a kind of a bug, a small bug with the palette. So let's go to Photo Tools here. It's a beautiful image. Um, let's move it to the center here. And let's just go to the categories. So over here, what I might do is I might go to the image optimize and go to boost local contrast. So here it's called local contrast boost. And we'll hit add to stack. And what this is going to do is it's going to add texture, but it's going to add way too much texture. It almost looks like a bad HDR image. So I'm going to drop it down to 0 and just boost it up slowly. And all I want is to get a little bit more definition in the mountains here. And so when I'm happy, I'm going to select my masking brush and remove it from the sky. I don't want any texture in the sky. If I want to have some more shape or depth to the sky, I would bring this into Lightroom, use an adjustment brush, and boost the contrast and the clarity a bit and paint it in the sky because that does a nice job. You could technically go into the basic brushes here and brush more contrast. So let's add that. And so now we can kind of paint contrast in the sky and then boost it up. So you can see how at 0 and then at 100% it kind of gets a little bit more body. So that's fine. I'm okay with that. So that's the first thing we can do. Now we can go to let's see. Let's go to stylized effects. I'll do golden hour enhancer, one of my favorite, most used effects. I'll add a nice warm tone to the foreground because what I'm going to do is remove it from the background. It's not really around golden hour, so I don't want the sky representing that. And I'm, again, being hasty with my drawings. Let's show the mask. All right, we did a good job there. And what I might do here is do a turbo boost. So let's add that. And you see this is kind of, I like what it's doing to the mountains. So I don't care for what it's doing to everything else. So what I can do is I can invert the mask and then select paint in and just paint it on the mountains. Because I don't like how it's really darkening the trees over here. And I'll paint it. Anything that's kind of bright, I'll paint it on, but nothing that's too dark. I kind of got too far, so let's remove it from here. Let's remove it from there. I painted it out of the mountains. Okay, so let's see our before and our after. Here's our original, and here's our after. So again, we can go to town with stylizing it. I can make it, add thermopylae, which I think will do a cool job of giving it a different tone, but that's really up to you, whether you like that look. If you're looking just to kind of boost what's already there because it's a beautiful scene, I would just remove it. And again, the original image is kind of flat. It almost looks like there's a haze. So by adding those effects, you've got it right here. So let me see what questions we have. Would perfect resize do a good job in front of working with photo tools? Well, that's a great question. So I said with this image, let's see. Let's hit apply and let's see how photo tool or perfect resize will handle it. So like I said, that's actually a really good question. Here's a small image. This looks kind of like it's 640 by 480. Let's see. Yeah, good call. 640 by 480. Let's go to perfect resize and let's see what we can do with enlarging it. Okay, so let's first zoom out to get it to 100% here. What I'll do next is I'm going to boost this to, let's say I want to print this at so 640 by 480, you probably wouldn't want to print more than a 4 by 6 because it's a very low resolution. But let's try 16 by 20. So that's a 240% boost. Let's increase the resolution. Let's zoom out. So it's at this point now it's about 1,000% increase. And what I want to do is double click on the hand. And so it's actually really, really good. For 1,000% increase, the detail is fantastic. Now it's what you're seeing here is a crop box because 16 by 20 is a different proportion than the 640 by 480 resolution. So you're free right now to kind of move it around. If you want, you can take the crop box here and move it, or you can make it smaller if you don't want as much of it in the frame. But whatever appears in the frame will always be 16 by 20. So that's how perfect resize would work. Oops. Make it larger. So let's say you wanted just that, and then you wanted to print it on canvas. So you turn on the gallery wrap, and there you go. So it's actually, I'm very impressed with that. Right now with the gallery wrap, it's a 917% increase in size. Amalia is asking in Photo Tools if you mask out something and then you apply it. Like let's say you apply an effect, you mask out, like we masked out the face from Hollywood Intensity. When you apply, if you apply an effect on top of it, will the mask retain? No, the effect will apply to the entire image, and if you want, you have to mask out the face again. And Candace had asked whether that feature is coming, and I said I can't answer it. If I use any of your products on my panel, the print option is grayed out in CS5. So you're saying that, so that's perfect resize. The print option is grayed out. I don't, if you can elaborate. Um, does gallery wrap have an option for how to treat the folded parts? Oh, I wish I kind of, um, let's go back to perfect resize. I wish I saw that before I closed out, but it's not a problem. Let's uh, let's just work with this one. Or no, let's boost it up. Let's go to 16 by 20 again, and then we'll boost the resolution to 300. And we'll fit to screen. To fit to screen, you can just double click on the hand icon. To go to a 100% pixel view, double click on the magnifying glass. So this is at a 100%, pixel view. So I just want to show the entire image here. And now let's turn gallery wrap back on. So the way gallery wrap works is this is your main window. It's your original composition. So if we turn it back off, here's our original composition inside the crop box. We'll turn it on. And now we can specify the thickness of the stretcher bars. So usually it's 2 inches, but you'll want to call your canvas printing company and ask them to verify. But by default, the method of sampling is called reflect. So what Perfect Resize is doing is it's sampling the inner 2 inches of the frame of the image, and it's reflecting it on all sides. So 2 inches here goes here, 2 inches in here goes here, and so on and so forth. You can also change that method from reflect to reflect soft, and that'll add a little bit of a surface blur if you want it to be a little softer. You can also do stretch. So stretch will sample the inner inch, not the inner 2 inches, and then it'll stretch it out. And then you can also soften that. Now, I'm not a fan of stretch or stretch soft. I really just like reflect. Because when it's hanging and you look at it from kind of an angle, it looks three-dimensional. It looks like, because you see the edge, it adds a three-dimensional feel, which is very cool. What you can also do is you can add a little bit of a color tint to the image. So you can see we have this opacity slider. If I bring the opacity to 100%, it'll turn solid black. And as I drop it down, you'll see that it has somewhat of a transparency. Now, black is the default color, but if I hit the color button here, and then I'm free to either select one of the stock colors, or you see this little magnifying glass? If I click on that, I can select anywhere in the image. So I can sample one of these dark greens and then close. It'll change the color. So now if I go to 100%, it'll have that sampled color. And so I can just drop the opacity. If you want to have a little bit of some sort of a color theme to the wraparound edges. Yeah, Marcy, this is being recorded and it'll be available for viewing. Absolutely. Let me just do a quick time check. How many of you there are going to get iPads today? I'm wondering. I know I'll be there. And I'm on the East Coast, so it goes is it 5 p.m. local time? So yeah, I'll be in about 2 hours. It'll go on sale. So that's how you can use the tools in the gallery wrap function of perfect resize. You could here, Mart, you'll be able to catch it on the repeat. So that's for sure. Let's see. Yeah, but you can ask a quick camera question. Ask any photography or technology question. What is PhotoTune for? Christian, I just so happen to have an image that was submitted to me that will do a really nice job of showing PhotoTune. Well done. So here's an image that that Rhonda submitted. It's a wedding shot. Now, you should be able to see that there's kind of a major color cast, especially on the skin. And this happens because when you use a strobe, a lot of times, or even natural light, the light will reflect off of surfaces, and you'll get kind of a color cast of that reflection. So PhotoTune is a great solution to get kind of consistent color. So if we go take this image to PhotoTune, I'll show you what I would do to correct the color. So this is PhotoTune, and we're in the Pro mode. So if you're new to PhotoTune, you might see this. Oh, not that. Where's my mode? Wizard. You'll see this. Images with people, without people, or jump to Pro mode. I just go to Pro mode, and there's an option here to always start in Pro mode. And just click. I don't like the wizard as much. So you'll see at the top of PhotoTune are 4 major sections: tone, color, skin tune, and detail. In tone, really the only thing I adjust here is the dynamic range slider. So you've got this checkbox, dynamic range enhancement, and below it is a strength slider. That belongs to the dynamic range enhancement. By default, it comes in at 70%, which is good for if we were working on that mountain image just before, this would be good. But for portraits, I drop that down to about 15%. It does a nice job of bringing out some of the shadow details, but I don't want too much of it. Now, the way PhotoTune also works is the left will always be the original image untouched, and the right will show whatever detail is there. So here we can also kind of boost the brightness just a bit if we want, and boost the contrast. But we still have that color cast. I'm going to skip color. Color, basically, you would use this color tab for more of a landscape shot. And what you do is you click on your image and you drag it towards the primary colors that you see, and it'll adjust the overall color. I don't like to use it for portraits either. Skin tune is what I love. So skin tune, you've got this dropper dialog. So what you're going to want to do is drag or click with this dropper on a mid-tone area of the skin. So just hover over an area that you think is kind of a good mid-tone area and hit click. And what that does is it samples, and you can keep resampling from a library of skin colors that we have. Now, what you can do is drop the warmth because it's way too warm, kind of to cool it off a bit. And you can start to see the difference that we're removing the skin tone. Now, you can see here there's a checkbox called correct skin only. If you select that, it'll only apply to skin colors and it won't correct the rest of the image, which is really nice. And so again, adjust the warmth to taste. And then that's how you would use PhotoTune, primarily to get correct color. Other than that, I don't really use it for anything else. And I will really only use it for portraits if I need to. Mars here asking camera settings should be neutral or standard. I'm not sure what you're referring to, so I don't know what that is. Um, Bob's asking, I'm about to buy a new camera. I've looked at the 60D Canon and their D7000. Um, so both the 60D and the D7000 Nikon are crop sensors. So if you're okay with having a crop sensor camera, that's a different, that's a moot point. I mean, I'm a Canon shooter. Canon has a wider variety of glass, especially that suits my particular shooting style. Like it has more tilt shift options. Um, but Nikon, especially their bodies, are extremely ergonomic and they're very thoughtfully laid out. Especially their higher end, the D700 and the D3, they're beautifully laid out and they give you like every option under the sun. Canons are a bit more limiting. So and so that's kind of my recommendation. They're both awesome cameras, the 60D and the D7000. Um, and I don't want to start a flame war over Canon versus Nikon. They're both awesome cameras. I think Canon has better video support, so if you're going to be doing video, um, and I can't remember if the 60D has an articulating LCD or if the D7000 does too. They might both have them or they might not, but it depends on whether that is good for you. Um, and Mike brings up a great point. If you go to DP Review, let me put this to everyone. DP Review is a fantastic site for reviews of cameras. So if you want, go there, and I'm sure that they'll give you a better idea. If I had to pick one or the other, I would say Canon just because I'm a Canon person. Canvas, I shoot full frame. I have a Canon 5D Mark II as my primary camera, and then I have a 40D, which is a crop sensor camera that I converted to infrared. So I do infrared photography as well. But I don't use it in any commercial setting. It's just kind of my own fine art stuff. Um, are there any other questions? Because I know we're over time, which I don't care about, but I want to make sure that I get to the questions that you guys may have. So Christian, I hope that helps with PhotoTune. What's the best way to remove bright spots from sweat on faces? Good question, David. Um, let's see if I can find something. Maybe in the onOne catalog we might have something. There is an effect in Photo Tools that does a nice job of softening those highlight areas. Let's see, grid. See, these are, let's go to Photo Tools. Let's see if there's anything with hotspot. It's nothing hot. No hotspots there. Ivanka Trump doesn't have any hotspots. I don't know if I have an image, but let's just do this one right here. Just so I can show you the effect that I recommend trying out. So let's go to Photo Tools. The effect is under the image or the portrait enhance category, and it's called model skin. And it does a nice job of kind of smoothing out skin. So if we add it, you'll see that it's got a little pen next to it, which means it's something you have to draw in. So we can zoom in a little bit and then let's kind of draw in on her nose And the shadow, what it does, it kind of softens that up a little bit. And so you could see if we toggle the before and the after, that's the before, that's the after. It just kind of softens it up. You don't really notice it. So I would try that model skin effect. Or powder skin. Powder skin is another one that might help. So try those. Very funny, Mike. um, what do I mean, Bob, by a cropped sensor? So the sensor, every digital camera has a sensor. Every one of them. Your iPhone, your pocket camera, they all have a sensor. The sensor is a photoreceptive sensor. It's sensitive to light. So the digital cameras, the SLR cameras, come typically in two types of sensors. There's either a full frame sensor, which is your standard sensor for a 35 millimeter, or a cropped sensor. And a cropped sensor, the sensor is just smaller, and it's not, basically, depending on the camera and the manufacturer, Canon's crop sensors are a 1.6 crop. So what does that mean? Well, let's open up a calculator. If on a full frame sensor, if you were to shoot with a 50 millimeter lens, your image would actually have a 50 millimeter focal length. The lens would be 50 millimeters. But if you were to, and that's on a full frame camera, a 5D Mark II, a 1D series or D700 with the Nikon, or the D3. They're more expensive. The lower end cameras, which are cropped sensors, for instance, Canon is a 1.6 time crop. So we would take 50 times 1.6. It'd actually be an 80 it would look like an 80 millimeter crop. Now that does not mean that it's magnifying 30 more millimeters. That's, I think, a common misconception. Oh, if it's a 1.6 crop and that means it's 80 millimeters, it's magnifying. There is no magnification at all. It's just based on the crop. It's the equivalent of an 80 millimeter lens. So you're not going to get as much in your frame. So in a way, if we kind of zoom out here a little bit, let's say, let's fit it to, okay, let's say this is 50 millimeters, which it actually might be. On a full frame, you might only see, well, that's too much, but, or let's say that's 50 millimeters. On a full frame, you'd see kind of like that. It would crop out the rest of the image. But in this case here, we're actually zooming. So don't think about zooming. So I hope that helps. I hope that hasn't confused you too much. Oh yeah, the 1Ds do have a 1.3 crop. That's a very good point, Bernard. Scratch that. The 1D the 1D is a cropped sensor, but I think the 1DS is a full frame sensor. So um, thanks for keeping me honest, Bernard. I always appreciate that. Um, so are there any other questions? And Bernard, you brought something up earlier. One second. Oh yeah, Bernard, I forwarded your email to our UK team, so they're addressing that. You're about the partners. So I hope that gets better. Does the crop sensor affect aspect ratio? What do you mean by that? Like, it shouldn't affect aspect ratio. I'm not 100% sure though. So to those situations, we can say, does crop sensors affect aspect ratio? So this is a good indication, or this picture right here is a good example of full frame versus cropped. There's no magnification, you're just not being able to get as much of the image in the frame. And now let's do a keyword search for aspect ratio. Given the same 3:2 aspect ratio of a 35 millimeter, this is equivalent to the ratio of the height or width. The ratio of the sensor is the square of the crop factor. I have to research that more, so I don't know the answer to that fully. Maybe someone here does. Yeah, Tapas, this will be available online. Yeah, but I will never, and to everyone out there, I will never answer a question that I'm not sure of. I'll have no problem going to Wikipedia um, to learn, just because it's not a question that gets asked very much. It's a very, very intuitive question to ask whether the aspect ratio has changed. Um, so, so Steve says the aspect ratio depends on the shape of the sensor, which makes sense actually. So, for instance, if it's not a sensor, but a film that's more square, that would affect your aspect ratio as well. How can you get better fuel mileage? Um, Stop driving or invest in one of those volts, or put in higher octane gas. That should increase your fuel mileage. You'll have to take another mortgage on your house, but it should increase it by a few miles per gallon using the US system. Um, okay, so, or you can run biodiesel, that's for sure. If there aren't any other questions, I'll finish up. I'm having a great time with you guys, and again, we're going to be doing it next week as well. So let's do this. I didn't get to all the images. I'll reach out to those of you who I haven't got to yet to see if you, or if you want to email me if you submitted an image and I didn't get to it. So Dave, actually it's just Dave. So if you want to let me use these for next week's, I will. What do we have just as a sneak preview? This one, I love this shot. What a great shot. I love how it almost looks like the gull is kind of bowing. It's a very, very cool shot. I dig it a lot. And this shot here, the field hockey event, this could be fun too to work on.